What's up? For those of you who are new to this channel, my name is Jessica Harris, and I am all about, empowering you on your faith walk journey of love, life, and truly everything in between. Today's video is definitely a little different, more so because I decided that I was going to go ahead and chop up my fruit. What I've been doing basically was just buying like different foods that I can pretty much like snack on, especially when I'm at work, and just buying them like ahead of time. This week I went ahead and got me some strawberries and some watermelon, as you can see. So I'm really excited about it. I don't know about you guys, but for me, being at work, being able to have like healthier options definitely makes like a huge difference. So that is that part there. And yeah, I just want to come on live and really just to talk about like being intentional with our time, being able to refocus, being able to rededicate ourselves to the plans and the actions that God places on our hearts, especially because today's like what, the 25th of January. And I don't know about you, but there's something about like the end of the month that either does one or two things. It can either put you into action and get you like going, like, ooh, gear is ready. Or for whatever reason, it causes you to kind of just feel like discouraged. And you're kind of like, man, it's not happening, da da X, Y, and Z. And I really wanted to touch base on both because online or whatever, but I know I've noticed myself like consuming more content more and more and more the last couple of days. And I really had to pause because I was like, wait a second, we could be doing something else with our time. Like we could be making videos, we could be editing, we could be creating other projects because I got a boatload of things to do. But it was just that concept. Like I saw how easily it was for me to get distracted, especially as we came up towards the end of the month. And I really just wanted to focus in on that part because I feel like it's something that one takes place without us even noticing. For me, I didn't peep I was getting distracted until I legit was like, yo, it's been like an hour and I've been scrolling through reels. And I was like, all right, it's done. We're done. And I really had to point a pause on it because it's easy to look at where you are in life and to look at, where other people are. And y'all, that spirit of comparison can easily come in. It can cause you to get easily distracted. It steals your joy and just so much more. And I really wanted to focus in on that part because I've heard a lot of people been talking about it lately. Like, y'all, don't fall into the trap of comparison. Don't fall for the trap of comparison. And the truth is, not everything that you see online from other people's lives is the way that you see in like their lives in real life. And it's so crazy because you think things are one way and then you begin to see how pieces begin to essentially get exposed, or things begin to come out, things get more revealed, or you begin to look at their fruit and you're like, I know they talk about X, but their character isn't reflecting all the pieces. So instead of sitting there wasting time and doing all that part, because that's exactly what was happening while I was working, I decided to come on and go live. Why? Because I understand that the value of time that I have makes a difference with the things that I'm doing. And I want the same thing for you guys as well, especially when it comes to like those of y'all who have stories to share, those of y'all who want to create but choose not to create. Like there's so many people that I'll read like in the comments and stuff like that who will literally look at someone's story and they'll be talking back about their own personal journeys, their own personal stories, but so many of them don't have not necessarily a channel where they're like talking about, like, not necessarily like you have to be on YouTube or Instagram or TikTok, but there's so many people that are easily able to talk about what it is that they do in the comments, but they're not sharing their stories in other means, right? They're not writing about it. They're not talking about it. They're simply just commenting. And it's crazy to me to see that part because I'm like, the amount of time that you've spent on this person's channel, commenting on this person's channel, invested in their journey and how much you're able to relate to them, you fail to realize that your story has the power to create a similar impact. And oftentimes people look at it and say, oh no, I can't do that because they don't feel as though their story is big enough to do it, or they don't feel encouraged to be able to do those things for whatever reason. And I really wanted to harp on that part because it's like, if we think about how much time we spend consuming, how much time we spend, praising other people, how much time we spend, really just glorifying other people for what they're doing, we could actually understand that that same time can be utilized to build out the plans and projects that we have within ourselves. That same time can be spent to sharing your story that can easily encourage another person. I've watched a lot of people these last few days who are like, man, my story's so similar, X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, man, if you wrote a book about what it was that you are experiencing, do you know how many people would be encouraged? Because these aren't people who are getting any attraction. These are comments that the person's comment has like 1,000 likes and stuff like that. So clearly what they're stating is resonating, right, with other people. But for whatever reason, they don't feel bold enough, right, to be able to go out and do the very things that the person whose life they're commenting on is doing. And I just want to encourage whoever, right, is listening, tuning in, listen, it's like 11 something, almost 12 o'clock, that your story matters. And that just as much as you're able to consume someone else's content, there's someone out there that will be willing to consume yours. There's someone out there who will be willing to hear your testimony, to hear what it is that you've been through, to hear what it is that you've gone through. That there's someone who's willing, right, to do the very thing that you're doing, which is commenting on someone else's blog post, commenting on someone else's podcast. Like, there's people who are ready and willing to support you. Why? Because we live in a world where people consume a lot of information, right? They're constantly wanting to know how to do this, that, and the third. We're in a day of technology. We're in a day of just everything being easily accessible, easily essentially just available. But what happens if we take that accessibility and we begin to use it for ourselves, right? If all I did all the time was talk about how I wish I could, I wish I could, I wish I could, I'll go in the grave believing a woulda, coulda, shoulda, and never really accomplishing the very things of which I desired. Why? Because I didn't feel like I was worthy enough, or I didn't think that I could do it, or I had 1,000 other reasons as to why it couldn't work out for me, knowing that if I saw it happening for the person in front of me, why couldn't it happen to me? If I look at the word, and the word of God says in Romans 2:11 that God is not a respecter of persons, and he places on your heart to share your story, and he's blessed somebody else with being able to do so, why wouldn't you think that sharing your journey or sharing your story could do the same thing? Why wouldn't you think that the impact that you can make can be able to do the same thing as another person? There's people who I've literally looked at lives on, and they're doing absolutely nothing. And they're just sitting there. And yet somehow, some way, they've been able to grow because they're talking about themselves, right? They're talking about the little things that they do, the things that they like, the things that they don't like. They're talking about the basic stuff. And I'm like, what is it that we truly could accomplish if we could begin to just get out of our own ways? Right? What is it that we actually could accomplish if we just sat there and said, you know what? I'm going to press play. I'm going to go live. I'm going to just go do it. I'm going to get out of my head and I'm just going to show up. I'm going to actually just, step out of my comfort zone and go live. I remember there was women that I had met in a few different communities over the last couple of years in particular who would say, they have this story of overcoming grief, of overcoming loss, of going through a divorce, of being a single mom, of job loss. They've had all these stories of going through all these different tragic events and how they overcame and how they are on the other side of it and how God really pushed them through. And they knew they were called to serve, and they knew that they were called to talk about it, and they knew that they were called to testify, and they knew it because they could feel it in their bellies, right? That there was something inside of them that yearned to talk and engage with other people, but there was something also within them that said, don't go live. There was something else inside of them that said, don't go on the screen, don't go on camera, don't show your face. Your voice sounds awful. Like there was something that they had to come up against, right? And it was that inner critic that was within themselves that was telling them everything that was the opposite of what God told them. And I'm mentioning that because I know I've been there, and I know a lot of other people have been there. I'm going to just eat that one from now. Where, for whatever reason, the moment that God gives you an idea, the moment that God gives you a whole big idea, big vision, right? And then all of a sudden, you're excited, you're ready, you wrote it down, and you're like, yes, I'm going for it. And then, the moment you're excited, it's like something comes and smacks it right down to the ground. And then you're just looking like, yo, ain't no way I can do it. Ain't no way I have the courage to do it. Ain't no way I'm bold enough to do that. Ain't no way I can do, a live or a video or make a blog or make a business. Ain't no way in the world anyone's gonna listen to me. Because as fast as that encouragement came, it's as fast as the enemy's attack came to kill it. It's as fast as your inner critic within yourself came to demolish it. It was as fast as the imposter syndrome began to rise inside of you. And then everything called it quits. So before you could even begin a thing, you were already calling it quits. Listen, we have to know how easily deceptive our minds can be to the negative thoughts that will roar against the very purpose that has been built inside of us. That's why reframing your thoughts, reframing your mindset, that's why affirming yourself, declaring the word of God is important. That's why knowing who you are in Christ is needed, right? Because if you know that if God gave you the word and his word can't fail, that means that whatever it is that he's called you to is going to succeed. That means that whatever it is that he's told you to do is going to come forth because it was already ordained. It was already predestined for you. It came before you. The word went ahead of you, meaning that whatever experiences you've gone through, it doesn't matter because the word went before you and the word is already established because it is written. So if we understood that concept, not just as something that was fiction, but more so fact, not just something that was a figment of an imagination from a book that we read late at night here and there and just say, okay, God, thank you, and may I have sweet dreams. But if we would actually hold on to the word and have it as food that would nurture us and that would cultivate a space within us, that not only would the word grow within us deep down into the ground, but it would gain roots. Right? You ever see like really big trees, like oak trees that are super huge, right? And you ever see how some trees, I can't say oak trees in particular for this one, but there are some trees, because I've gone on nature walks, where the roots are above the ground, right? So they kind of look like they're shallow, and maybe they're not, maybe they're deep, but they're above the ground. And then there's other trees that are super sturdy because windstorms and thunderstorms and tornadoes hit, and that tree stands really firm in the ground. Why? Because they're rooted in something. They're rooted in a source that goes way deeper than the surface. So if you can be planted and rooted in God and rooted in his word and understanding who you are, you can weather the storms and not wither. Right? You can weather the situations and not allow yourself to be casted to and fro, back and forth as little children. But we have to know who we are. Getting the word about who you are is one thing. Being able to believe in it is something entirely different. Being able to testify to the goodness of God and knowing that it's going to happen is totally different. Knowing that believing by faith that it's going to happen, and not only just believing by faith, but believing without doubting, right? And I know that means with faith, but I'm saying like we have to understand that when we believe in that thing, we can't sit there and doubt it. It's like trying to say, God, I believe you, but at the same time, I doubt you. And now you're canceling out the very things of which you're believing in. We have to be able to believe in it and stand 10 toes down on it. We have to believe in whatever it is that we're called to do, whatever story we have, whatever purpose that is, without allowing ourselves to get tossed back and forth. So when I look at the time that I have, the time that you have, the time that's available right now to do the works, to do the projects, right? To write books, to dream big, to make businesses, to have hobbies, y'all. There is so much time that we don't use to our advantage because we're caught up in our feelings, or we're caught up in what the world tells us, or we're caught up in day-to-day routines and day-to-day tasks and priorities. And I'm not saying those things aren't important. There's a time and a place for everything. But if we would manage our time better, then maybe we could actually begin to occupy the spaces that we belong in. I have literally been able to watch how he will use a person and the very things that they already do. Like, they don't have to do anything extra. They have to just be themselves. And I think that's a beautiful thing, because sometimes we think that in order for us to be, in this big position that God is calling us to, that we have to be any different than who we already are. He starts us and meets us exactly where we are in the midst, and then we build up and get to a different level. And as he increases in us, everything else begins to do the same thing. But we have to be willing to surrender and let some things go in the process. And maybe that means not going after every commitment that someone brings your way. Maybe that means that you can't say yes to every single thing that comes up. Maybe you can't sit there and hang around the same groups of people all the time, because maybe the way that he's trying to elevate you in this season is different than it was in the last one. Maybe what you're seeing right now taking place in front of you is a little bit different than the last time. And that's why you keep getting that nudge to get offline and do something else. Because maybe there's something else that he's trying to brew inside of you, and you can feel it in your belly, but for whatever reason, you choose to stay online because you're like, well, God, this is where my time and my focus is. But he's like, if you would just move yourself in a different direction and get your eyes focused on something different, then maybe you will see that I'm calling you to do something more in this hour, in this season. Sometimes we have to be willing to make the sacrifice to watch the joy come in a different way that we didn't even expect it to. Those little bits of sacrifices that we make here and there about, all right, God, I'm going to come offline. All right, God, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z instead. All right, God, I'm going to focus on the vision. All right, God, I'm going to take time away from hanging out with friends because I'm going to be dedicated for this next week, for this next month, for this next year, for this next period of time to get this vision birthed out, because I know you're doing something, because we trust in the vision that he's placed inside of us. Do you trust him in the vision that he's given you, to be able to go forth in the ways in which he's calling you to? Do you trust in him to be the God of your life in every situation and in every season? Or do you just trust him with that and not expecting that there's more? Do you trust him to just do the little bit, but not realizing that he's a big, ginormous, gigantic, great God? Put things into perspective for a moment. Why do you think the negative thoughts come the very moment that he gives you a word? Because maybe there's something that's trying to stomp out the vision that he gave you, not realizing that he also gave you the strength and endurance and patience to be able to withstand that very storm. That if you would just surrender unto him, that he will give you exactly what he needs, because he tells us in his word that he will be our strength, and that we will not grow faint, and that we will not be weak, because he will be our strength in the midst of that. Y'all, go to Isaiah 40:29, because I can't quote it entirely, but that is what he does. And Isaiah 40:31, he literally says that I will mount you up like the eagles. Y'all, he tells us this in his word. He tells us in Psalms 23:1 that the Lord is our shepherd, and we shall not want. He tells us so much in his word about how he gives us the very things of which we need when we seek him. The same thing in Matthew 6:33, for seek ye the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all will be given unto you. The very things of which we're needing and which we're seeking for literally comes from God. It comes from the source. It comes from those roots that we put deep down into the ground, just like the trees of Lebanon, just like the cedar trees. And that is the way that we are to be planted and rooted in this hour. Not swaying, not going back and forth, not in our minds, not in our thoughts, not trying to figure out things. Listen, a double-minded person produces nothing. He can't get blessed. You're confused. You're walking in confusion, literally. We have to learn how to put on the mind of Christ in every situation. Not just when it comes to business, not just when it comes to family, not just when it comes to going to church on Sunday, because y'all know Sunday about to push around in a minute or two, depending on what time zone you're in. But it's understanding who you are and your identity in God. And then watching him begin to flourish you in the midst of that. And knowing that you don't have to be perfect in order to launch out as the version he's calling you to be. Because it's as you grow with him that he transforms you. It's like as you take a step, he takes a step. And as you move, he's moving. And as you do this, he's doing that. I know there's often times where people is like, well, I can't do X, Y, and Z because that means I have to let go of da-da-da-da, and this laundry list comes out of their mouth. And I'm like, listen, I can't speak for your laundry list, but I can speak for mine. And I can tell you right now that God is so good that he will take the desires of himself and place them within you. So when it's time to let go of some taste buds, like drinking, that was one of my vices, right? Not an alcoholic, but I like to drink wine and stuff like that. But that was an area that he was like, I'm going to remove that taste bud from you because I don't want that a part of you. Little did I know that that was the very thing that once he took that away, I walked into a package store. I tried to buy a bottle of wine. I looked at it and was like, taste was gone. I was like, oh, okay, I don't even want it. I didn't have to do anything. I didn't have to ask him to do it for me. He just did it. Sometimes we overthink the process too far ahead, not realizing that his grace is sufficient and that he will meet us in the process if we're willing and if we would simply just surrender. Sometimes we just have to be willing to surrender and allow him to be God in our lives. And I know this life is a little bit of everything from time to how you manage it to how you see yourself. But y'all, it ties together because there's too many of you who are special, who have power, who have the power and the authority of God working through you. Like that's what he gives us. But you have passions, you have desires, you have visions, you have dreams, you have purpose. And it sucks to look at people who have purpose and you can see it and they're doing nothing with it because life experiences have taught them that they are not capable or able to have it, or that they're not able to go after it, or they don't have the confidence to just do it. It sucks to watch it. So I just want you to allow God to be God in your life, because I am believing by faith that as you allow him in, whatever it was that was taking place will then produce what it needs to do. Go read John 15, how he calls you his friend, and how he talks about how he is the vine and the tree and the branches allowed, because that's what's coming to mind is the vine. Let him be the vine with you and him. Y'all read the chapter because my physical Bible's at home and I'm still at work, and y'all, I really gotta go because it's late. But anyways, let God be God. Let him pour into you. Let him produce the fruit within you. Let him produce that oil in you inside of this season to be able to go forth in the ways in which he's calling you to. Let him be able to produce everything within you because it's there. It's there. It's there. You just gotta be willing to do it. Faith without works is dead. You may have faith, but put your action to it. You can have faith, but put your action to it. Don't just be a hearer of the word, but be a doer in the process of it. Y'all, it's there. It's readily and available to you. And you are more than capable. And you are more than enough. Because marvelous are the works of his hands. And you are fearfully and wonderfully made. Psalms 139:14. He's the potter, we're the clay. Listen, let him do the work within you. All right, y'all. That is my time because I got to go. Like, I still got to go home. All right, y'all. I'm out. Peace and blessings to each and every one of you guys. Y'all, like, share, subscribe, and tap in because God is moving and I'm excited. All right. Have a great night, y'all. We got